All right, we're going to go ahead and get started as close to as on time as we can. Again, Allison Schaberg, I'm here tonight with the ADDA Association, that's the Attention Deficit Disorders Association. We are a not-for-profit group that was founded out of the greater Houston area by a woman by the name of Pam Esser. I lead the Fort Bend County chapter of ADDA, and we are a support group that supports families with kids with ADHD. And so usually what happens, we used to meet face-to-face at Sugarland Baptist Church, which of course we haven't met face-to-face in over a year now with the great pandemic that seems to be never ending. But we have been meeting monthly by Zoom, and we typically meet the last Tuesday of every month. If you're not familiar with this organization, it's a wonderful organization. There is no obligation for you to pay to be a member. You don't have to join this organization. There's no big sales pitch. But this organization does do big ADHD conferences annually. They get big speakers in from across the country that are really, really fabulous. So you may want to participate in that. Should you be interested in joining the organization, it's $40 a year. I think it might be $60 if you're a professional, $40 for a family. But there is just a ton of resources out there for your membership. So tonight's meeting is being recorded. Your cameras and your microphones are muted, so we can't see you and we can't hear you. But we do want your interaction. So if you have questions, we ask that you will put your questions in the chat box tonight. I'm going to be monitoring the chat box. And as we're going through the presentation, I'm going to read those questions to Marilyn tonight. So tonight, our topic is basically talking about, you know, what are the next steps? What happens after high school for those of us that have kids that have disabilities and maybe they won't be moving on to the university or college? What are some other options out there? So I'm excited tonight to have Marilyn Gilbreath with us with the Texas Workforce Commission Solutions. She's going to go through all of that and the confusion between Workforce Solutions and Workforce Commission, but she's going to talk to you about some programs that are available to our students that may be of extreme value to you. So having said that, Marilyn, I'm going to turn this over to you. Tonight's meeting is being recorded. Probably tomorrow sometime, you'll get an email with Marilyn's contact information, my contact information, and a link to tonight's webinar. So thanks so much, Marilyn, for being back with us. I'm going to just turn it right on over to you.
And also, Allison, I'm going to send you a link to the Start My VR, which is something new that I'll talk about a little bit, so they'll get that tomorrow when you send it out. But good evening, everybody. I apologize for my voice. I'm fighting allergies. But my name is Marilyn Gilbreath, and I'm the Community Outreach and Awareness Specialist. So we call ourselves ACOA. There's one of me in every region. So San Antonio, Lubbock, Austin, Tyler, Houston, and I'm forgetting one, Dallas. Okay, so there's one of me in each area. The reason our positions were created is because we've gone under this name change for the last, maybe, I guess now we're looking at maybe since 2004 to 2021, so 17 years, we've had 3 name changes. So some people knew us as Texas Rehabilitation Commission, some people knew us as Department of Assistive and Rehabilitative Services, DARS, and now we are Texas Workforce Solutions, Vocational Rehabilitation Services. It gets really crazy. In many instances, we are housed in our Houston area. We're co-located, which makes things a little bit easier, okay? So what I want to talk to you tonight about is Vocational Rehabilitation Services. So what is vocational rehabilitation? We help people with a disability obtain, retain, or advance in, and here's the big caveat, competitive integrated employment. So everything that we do under Vocational Rehabilitation Services has to lead to going to work. So that's a real interesting conversation sometimes that we've not had with our students, especially once they graduate. And then we're like, the epiphany comes on. What are they going to do for 40 hours a week? And so we start as early as 14, working with transition age youth, and that's a separate program. But we do that because there's a process. If you stop and think about the job that you hold today, is it the job you wanted at 14? Is it the job you wanted at 21? Is it even the job you got your degree in? So we start early with students with a disability and helping them make that transition out of high school to the world of work. So we talk about competitive integrated employment. So what does that mean? That means that we help people with a disability get the same kind of job you or I would have. The difference is we work within the disability. Okay, so who do we serve? This is a small number of who we serve. Okay, we could be here for a couple of hours tonight talking about, do you serve this disability? And I'd say yes. We serve any and every disability that is an impediment to employment. Okay, what does that mean? That means if you have a disability that's getting in the way of you getting that job, then we can serve you. Because what happens is vocational rehabilitation services are services that we put in place to help do one of two things. Either reduce that impediment, the thing that's getting it, or the things that are getting in the way, or eliminate the thing or the things that are getting in the way so you can do your job. Okay, so this is a small list of who we serve. Any disability, mental, physical, visual impairment. Okay, if you have a disability, it's an impediment to employment, we will serve you.
Marilyn, can you let's talk a little bit further about that, because tonight's group is predominantly well, I guess we could have anybody here, but this is an ADHD support group, and sometimes we have people on the spectrum that also attend this group. And a lot of times sometimes people view ADHD as a disability, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes the disability coming through the teenage years becomes more prevalent, and some other the mental health things that come along with it. But could you talk about how often you are serving families that have ADHD or maybe autism spectrum disorder, something like? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I don't have numbers, so I hate to start talking numbers, but you can go out there and Google that kind of thing. But our transition program does handle or does serve individuals with autism. Matter of fact, we've got a great autism program that's kind of monitored out of Dallas, out of Austin, by Jennifer Hines. She has a group of people across the state that are subject matter experts, for lack of a better word, that work with students with autism. ADHD, if either of those diagnoses interfere with work, that's what the counselor and that customer are going to talk about. How does it interfere? So if I have ADHD and I'm not able to pay attention to get things done, then we're talking about services to help you learn to concentrate, whatever those services may be. We could be here all night talking about what that may be. Everybody always runs to medication.
And some things we've seen are maybe some of the kids struggle to, maybe they can get the job, but they can't keep the job. Maybe they struggle with some of the interpersonal relationships, or maybe they have explosive personalities, or basically the smallest thing sets them off and they go from 0 to 1,000. I mean, those are some characteristics that I know as families. I mean, I'm an ADHD mom, so these are some of the things that I know that we've dealt with. And I know that 2 of my 4 kids, have been involved with vocational rehab services. So it doesn't necessarily mean, sometimes, and I guess we all know this, but sometimes when people are thinking of this disability, right, they're thinking of a person that's in a chair, they don't walk or they don't talk, or, and there are all levels of disabilities. But there are a lot of disabilities that I like to call them the invisible disabilities, where you look at the person, they don't really look that disabled, and sometimes they don't act that disabled. But maybe from a maturity perspective, we talk about this a lot with ADHD. They're 2 to 4 years behind from a maturity level. So anyway, I just wanted to hit on those things, because ADHD is definitely one of those disabilities that you don't necessarily see when you first glance at that individual. You have to spend a little bit more time with them.
And from a parental's perspective, if you know as a parent that your child is going to struggle on a job for whatever the reason is, or struggle to keep a job, then the question becomes, why? What is it attached to? And that's how you determine if it's a disability or not. Does that make sense? So think in terms of your child going to work every day, with you, not your child, just another person that you're supervising. The things that they struggle with that you have to deal with as a supervisor, those are impediments to employment. That's the easy breezy way to
I was
look
just
at
thinking of something small that a lot of our ADHD parents deal with, of like kids even in high school still having to wake them up, like they can't get up to an alarm clock, or some of those kind of things. Of these are kids going on break and can't get back to work on time from break, or can't get to work on time. Some of those, I mean, so it sounds small, but it only takes a couple of those instances in the workplace for them to be fired. So these little hand-holding things that as parents we're doing all the time for these ADHD kids, they will be impediments to employment. So
exactly.
that's good.
Exactly. So I like to tell parents to think about your child being your employee and not related to you. Would you fire them? And why would you fire them? Those are the things that we want to address with vocational rehabilitation services. So when you sit down, you start talking to the counselor, and your child says, "Oh, I'm great." And then the counselor says, "Well, why did you lose the last 3 jobs?" And they go, "Because the manager sucked." We get that. Then that's the time for parents to step in and add that additional information, because we have to make sure that we're understanding what's going on. This is the lovely thing, and I'm going off a little bit on this. This is a lovely thing I used to tell parents when I was a transition specialist. And Kristen Davis is our regional transition specialist. So she works directly with transition age youth. I love the fact that we start working with students at age 14, because guess what? It's okay to cuss your supervisor out at 14 in a volunteer situation. Because what happens is you come back to your counselor and you sit down, you have a counseling and guidance, and you discuss what happened. Why did you do that? What other things could you put in place to make sure that that didn't happen? Here's some skills we're going to give you to help you not to do that again. Next year, they're in a volunteer program at 15. They kind of rock and roll pretty good. They work 3 months before they cuss the supervisor out. Have we made progress? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I love working with them older, because then we get to teach those skills that are needed in the workplace. We allow them trial and error, because you said you didn't have any issues, but you got fired because you couldn't wake yourself up. But you didn't want mom and didn't want dad to set the alarm clock. You wanted to do it yourself. So here's a fact-finding mission. Johnny, you've been fired twice for not getting to work on time. Let's talk about that. And that's how we walk through the VR process. Okay? So are you eligible for services? Depends on how your disability interferes with work. We all know people with severe disabilities that have no impediments to employment. If you look around your community, look around your environment, your office, there are plenty of people with disabilities that don't have an impediment to employment. However, there are a great many of them that do. And as Allison said, they're sometimes invisible, which makes it a little bit harder for transition age youth, because they spend so much time in school not talking about it. And so if you don't talk about it, it kind of doesn't go away, especially if you're not already trying. Go ahead. Sorry.
I said one thing that you said, I want to make sure that everybody heard, because it kind of went fast. Age 14. Age 14 is when you can start your journey with the vocational rehab. And this is so important to our ADHD population. Okay, so what? They're not going to start working until they're 16 or 17 years old.
But volunteer work is work. Volunteering is work.
And that's good. But I think to our point is, sometimes I use the term that we're a little late to the party. We might be late to the party on learning. Some of them are gifted. There's no question. But sometimes there's struggles with dyscalculia, with reading difficulties, et cetera. There's all kinds of usual deficits that they're working on. So the fact that you don't have to wait till they're 16 years old to start these services, they can be ramping up and learning these skills and growing these skills and getting ready to be eligible and ready for employment at 16. So I love that you guys start this as early as 14.
Yes, I do too. There was a time we started as a senior and I hated that. Because as I said, you know, a lot of times you talk to a student and you say, you know, what is your disability? And they go, I don't have one. And so now we're starting from square one with somebody about to graduate high school. And the thing that I used to also say when I was a transition specialist was every single one of us walking this earth has a disability of some sort because nobody's perfect. Whether it's a temporary disability, a seasonal right now I have a disability. My allergies are killing me. I'm probably talking way too loud because I can't really hear. My hearing is impaired. It's a disability. It's temporary, but it's a disability. And we need to start acknowledging things like that and stop making it so taboo. We all have disabilities. Now let's put some things in place. I'm going to take major meds in a minute when I get off with you. I'm going to take a hot shower and go to bed. And in the morning, I'll be back to normal. So it's the same concept. Let's figure out what all the impediments are. Let's put some services in place so we can get on with life. But we have to acknowledge what those issues are. Okay? So you have to have a physical, mental, or visual disability that is a substantial barrier to all these things right here. Preparing for, can I get the training on time? I want to be a barber, but can I get to the barber training on time? Obtaining a job. I went through the barber training, but I don't interview well. So I need some interviewing skills. Engaging in, I don't have appropriate behavior at work. I don't know how to talk to the opposite sex appropriately. Retaining or advancing in employment. I have the job, but I'm sitting in this entry-level position only because of my disability and not what I choose. Okay, so that's the first requirement for eligibility. Second one, next slide. The impairment must cause a substantial impediment to employment. So what does substantial look like? That's the fact-finding mission that happens between the counselor, the student, the parent, and anybody else that's sitting around the table in this student's life or this customer's life. Because everybody needs, I love to say, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, Ruth. Because we can only address issues that we're aware of. So we talk about everything that happens in this person's environment. How are you doing in school? What classes do you well in? What classes do you not do well in? Which teacher is always the one that kicks you out of class, and why did they kick you out of class? We're looking at all these different issues. When are you taking meds? Do you take your meds? Parents giving your meds every day, you give yourself your meds. You're taking meds in the morning, you're taking them at night. We talk about all this. Do you clean up after yourself? Do you have chores? Do you have responsibilities? Because nothing magical happens at 16 about going to work and taking directives from a boss when you can't take the directives from mom and dad. And so those are some of the things that we look at. Third requirement is the customer requires our services, which means when we talk about all the things that are keeping them from becoming employed, there are vocational rehabilitation services that can address those issues. I always get this question. What happens if there are no VR services to address those issues? Good question. And I don't know. That's the honest truth. Because that's a fact-finding mission for the medical providers. So maybe we're sending somebody out for a neurological evaluation, a psychological evaluation, whatever we're sending them out for. We're going to get people who have more insight than the counselor to come up with that formula for how do we address it. Every once in a blue moon, we have somebody that's not competitive integrated employment appropriate. Okay, everybody hates to hear that. Every once in a while we do, because if a child or a customer doesn't understand dangerous situations, can never work independently, those are some things we need to look at. Because remember, our vocational rehabilitation services are not lifelong. And we're talking about competitive, integrated employment. They're going to a job somewhere, just like you and I have. There's not going to be forever supports. And so I had
Marilyn, can we talk about these assessments? Because this is something that comes up almost every week in our webinar for special needs. Because we talk about your services, the VR, and what have you. One of the things that you said, and I just want to spend a little bit more time on this because all of our families basically need some of these things anyway, as it relates to other things that might be going on, accommodations, school, things like that. So one thing that she said is real clear is basically there is an initial assessment, and from that initial assessment, your counselor works with your student and you, if you're involved, depending on whatever level your involvement. But your counselor is going to determine what outside assessments are needed. So she mentioned a neuropsych report. Some of these neuropsych testings could be $3,500, $5,000, not covered by insurance. These are the same tests that you need to get accommodations on the community college level, the university level. So that's the same kind of test. Another test she mentioned was a vocational evaluation. And as parents, you can pay and request these tests yourself and get them on the outside. But when your counselor through VR, when you're connected through VR and your counselor is requesting these tests and are covered by VR. It's not an out-of-pocket expense to you. So you need to be aware of that. And furthermore, what we have found on these testing, VR has connections with these companies and they have an in to get you in. These people that are doing on a regular basis the neuropsych, the vocavals and things like that, they've been backed up for a year and a half now because of the pandemic. They've been seeing less patients and things like that. So while you still can go and buy these things yourself and do this for your child, Texas Children's may tell you that they're a year behind or 6 months behind. And my experience is that VR had a plan, we put a plan together, and then action started happening. These assessments started getting scheduled, then we had results. And so I would say that was valuable to me as a parent to have that updated. We had it before, but had the updated information of a clear picture of where your child stands. What is their IQ?
And let me
what
add
are
to
their
that too. Everything that we do is about going to work. So it's not just an evaluation to get a diagnosis, because that's not what we're looking for. You have that already coming in the door. We're trying to determine your ability to do competitive integrated employment. So every single evaluation, testing, it doesn't matter what service we provide. It's all with the end result of, can you obtain this job? And we're going to talk about what that job looks like in just a second. Next slide. So the fourth requirement for eligibility is that the customer will benefit from our services, which means with our services that we have provided, they actually can obtain that employment goal. They can obtain, advance in competitive integrated employment once those services are completed. Okay. Next thing, next slide. Everybody listen to this. Eligibility does not depend upon your income. You can be Rockefeller and still be eligible for VR services, vocational rehabilitation services. Eligibility does not depend upon your income. Okay, everybody hear that? Okay, so then they said, well, what kind of services are there? This is a minute list of services, because just as I said earlier, we could talk about disabilities ad nauseum. The VR services are going to go along with that disability and the impediments to employment. This is just a high number of things that we see off the bat, okay? Training. When we talk about counseling, it's not the same counseling I talked about with the counselor. When I talk about counseling, I'm talking about couch counseling with a psychiatrist, and we can pay for some of those. Allison talked about explosive behaviors. There may be a situation where we need to put somebody in counseling to address that explosive behavior and why it's happening. Because the thing about that is, when students are in school, they're very much protected. So if a student has an explosive episode, tears up the classroom, maybe even hits the teacher, the wagons circle around that student to a positive, to start trying to help them and take care of them, okay? When you're on a job and you have an explosive episode and you tear up the office and you hit the supervisor, they're calling the police. So those are things that we want to address before we get to that point. So what kind of services are available? Whatever services are needed to address that particular impediment or impediments to employment. Okay. So in that fact-finding mission that we talked about, that's where all that stuff is flushed out. Here's what's going on. Here are the things we need to put in place. All right. Next slide. So this is key. This is so key. All of our services are individualized, okay? And why is that? Two people with bipolar disorder are not the same. They don't have the same issues with their vocational goal. Two people with schizophrenic don't have the same issue. Two people with ADDA, two people who are wheelchair users. So you look at the individual, what their vocational goal is, and what impediments are in the way. What things are in the way of them obtaining that goal? So it's an individualized service because the counselor is looking specifically at the unique needs of that person, their disability, their skill set, the impediments to employment, and the vocational goal. Next slide. Did I lose you, Allison? Okay, there we go.
Is it, yeah, it's showing on my end.
Okay, it finally popped up. So individual services, what is the plan, okay? If you're eligible for vocational rehabilitation services, the next step is to develop a plan for reaching your goal. Your goal is your employment goal. So the counselor, the student, customer, parents, whomever's sitting around the table in that child's life, sit down and discuss a plan. The plan is how do we go from this point to employment? That's our plan. Next slide. And so we call that an individualized plan for employment, okay? IPE, you know, we love our acronyms. So your plan for employment includes your vocational goal, the services that you need to reach that goal. And here's the big one I want you to hear, because this is just as important. This is a three-legged stool, okay? Your agreed participation in the services. And I say this with emphasis because a lot of times parents want services for their student doesn't want services. And the buck stops with the student. Because we can have all of these services in place. We can have a vocational goal, but the student wants to cherry pick what they want to do and what they don't want to do. And it doesn't work that way. So I want to give a good example of that. If I'm going to get a degree in English, there's a degree plan set out for me. It tells me every single course that I need to take. I have to take every single one of those classes, including math, because that's where a lot of people struggle and they want to substitute something for math, and that's not happening, even in general studies. The only thing that can change that degree plan is if there is an equal to, maybe I don't take English Lit, maybe I take World Lit, those kind of things. Those are the ways you can substitute, but literature needs to be taken nonetheless. So you don't get the cherry pick. Let's say my degree plan is going to cost be 132 hours. And I say, you know what? I'm going to do 100 hours and I want my bachelor's degree. It doesn't work that way. So when you sit down and you look at the plan, because the plan is geared on, here are your issues. Here are the services to address those issues. And are you willing to participate in all the services? And that's crucial, guys.
And so basically what we've seen with this, Marilyn, is that we've got a lot of parents that are like here tonight that are taking their evening to learn about this for their kids. They care about their kids. They want what's best for their kids. Mom thinks it's a good idea. Dad thinks it's a great idea. But little Johnny isn't on board with this. So in this example, that's where they can't help your son. Is if he's not on board. And so that there has been some issues with families with that, where everybody agrees that, the VR counselor, the parents, everybody agrees, even people at school know that they need this service. But basically what you're saying is if the kid is, against it or not willing to do their part or participate, then it's over.
It really is. We can pay for it, but they're not getting what we're paying for. And again, we have to be good stewards of the federal dollars. And so I say that because that's why I go back to that thing about I like to talk about the disability up front. Let's get rid of the stigma. When I used to meet with students, because we have what we call transition VR counselors who actually pre-COVID actually came out to the schools. When I met with a student for the first time, and this is typically because you signed off on it and they let people come into the school and meet with your student. When I would meet with a student, the first thing I did was I tried to establish a relationship. And how do I do that? I try to find something that we can have in common. So someone comes in and he's got on some fabulous snakeskin boots and a beautiful belt buckle. Now I'm going to talk about that. I want to make a connection with that student. And then I want to go into, tell me about your classes. And they go, what do you mean? Tell me about the classes that you're taking. What kind of help do you get in your classes? Do you get any kind of help? And that's what opens the door for them to acknowledge what's going on. Because how many times have we told our kids, what happens at home stays at home? So you come in rolling in going, tell me what your disability is. And they're like, I don't even know you, lady. And so it's about establishing a relationship and helping them understand that I'm here to help. Once you graduate high school, I know you're just a sophomore, but what kind of job are you interested in? I want to be a rocket scientist. Cool. What do you know about a rocket scientist? You know what? I want you to look that up for me. I'm going to be at the school next week. I'm going to send some paperwork home to mom and dad to sign. I'm going to be back here on Tuesday at this school, and I want you to come back and talk to me about being a rocket scientist. That's how we start to get to information.
And I do think about the competitive component of this. These aren't, bad jobs. I mean, the Texas Workforce Commission Solutions, they have relationships with major employers all across, the state. They have relationships. There are opportunities to where even as such as if maybe your child has more severity than others, but maybe they need a job coach, and that can be supplied through these programs. And that's the cool thing is it takes some of it off of us, which is necessary because they have to move towards some of this independence and get out from under our all-encompassing mothering, fathering ways, and have to report to other people in life. And that's just the way it goes. But I think that the cool thing is, and kind of a little motivation for your kids that might be like, I don't know about this, is, man, they really do have an opportunity to find a great job. And it may be far better than some of their peers have or things like that. And all kids like to have money. Well, I think all kids do, the way mine like it. But anyway, being able to make some money and things like that, I think is definitely important.
And I think one of the things that's real key too, and when I was a transition specialist, I used to share this with the TVRCs all the time. Find out what that kid's hot button is. What is their motivation? Where do you want to live? What kind of home do you want to live in? Do you want to be married? Do you want to have kids? Do you want to live with mom and dad the rest of your life? You start having those kind of conversations, and it takes you down a path. And it's the path you want to go to. Wherever it may lead, it's movement.
And I do agree. I agree with that too. Of that, having those intentional conversations of tell me what you want, because we're so busy telling them what they should want or what we want for them. Tell me what you want. And no matter what it is, I've heard it all. I mean, I've heard it all.
No matter what it is.
And no matter what it,
I want to be a rocket scientist, and I read on the
I want to be
level.
a tattoo artist.
Yes.
I want to be a tattoo artist. I'm going to be a rock star. I mean, whatever it is, that's where we have to withhold that judgment and say, you know what? I believe that you have the ability to do whatever it takes to do that. So, for instance, the tattoo artist. Well, what are the requirements in the state of Texas for that? How old do you have to be a tattoo artist? What does the average tattoo artist make? If you're really good and the top of your game, how much money could you make at that? Where is the best state in the United States to be a tattoo artist? I mean, so go with it, right? And let them do a little bit of research on that, no matter what they say, no matter what, even if your skin is crawling. And then they figure it out and they do that little research. Oh, wait, maybe I can't make this much money at that. Well, here's something else that I thought about. And those little lights start going off in their head, and then it becomes their idea, and they're feeling pretty motivated about it. Instead of our idea that they think it's dumb. You know, we are dumb. They think we are. So our good ideas fall often on deaf ears when they're at this age anyway. So maybe it's just at my house, but
no, it's not. Trust me. Been doing this for 30 plus years. It's rampant across the United States. So when we talk about that employment, individualized plan for employment, we're talking about a vocational goal that has been chosen. And your counselor is going to monitor that progress throughout that process, however long it is. You may be in counseling for 15 sessions over 3 months. You may be in a training program that's a year long. You may be in academic training that will take you 4 years to obtain that degree. Whatever length of time the services require to get to the point where you are ready for employment, the counselors monitor those services. Where that gets real particularly sticky is when somebody is going through training and they're also getting one-on-one counseling that we're paying for, and they don't go. They went to the first 2 or 3 and then they stopped going. The counselor gets reports on that. So then we have a conversation, because that's not what we agreed on. So then we need to talk about, why aren't you going? What are the reasons behind that? Is there something that VR can do on our end of it to figure out how to rejig it? Are we changing people, or what are we putting in place? Are we having a conversation about, this is what you need again to get to this level? And that's when conversations get to be real. That's when a lot of students have that reality check of what it means to be an adult. Welcome to the adult world, because your actions have consequences. And we talk about that.
We had a question regarding jobs, like the placements. Are they private sector, government sector, a little bit of both?
Anywhere you or I work. Everybody on this call, anywhere we work. We don't have special places for people with disabilities.
Good. So the options are really unlimited, really. That's good. That's good to know.
Now, let me say this. If your vocational goal, whatever your job is that you've decided upon, if you sit down and look at the VR services that are available to help you reach that employment goal, if those VR services cannot help you reach that employment goal, then we have to have a discussion about the employment goal. Does that make sense? Example, the employment goal has to be agreed upon between the counselor and the customer. Unfortunately, mom and dad aren't in that. It's the counselor and the customer have to agree on the employment goal. So if I'm a great student, everybody loves me, I'm just nice to everybody, and I want to be a math teacher, but I read on the 4th grade level. What does it require me to be a math teacher? A 4-year degree. If my disability doesn't allow me to get to that 4-year degree, then we have to have a conversation about that, because that's semantics. So maybe I'm not going to be a math teacher, Maybe I'm going to be a preschool teacher and I teach the kids their numbers and how to count and those kind of things. Because reality is, if I'm reading on the 3rd grade level, nothing magical is happening to change that. Okay, so I just want to make sure I say that. So the vocational goal has to be something that the counselor and the customer can agree upon.
What that brought me to a memory that I had of a previous webinar that you and I have done together. There is funding. There is funding for these programs through the state, through federal programs. You guys have dollars and grants that you spend on that are earmarked for this, and so that's why these services are often covered. But is it true? So we've heard this. Is it true? So let's just say, for instance, someone wants to be a cosmetologist or they're a beautician or something like that. Well, that would require cosmetology school. So if that was part of your plan, we've been talking about the IPE, and if part of the plan to reach that, competitive employment was cosmetology school, is it possible that the VR services may pay for some or a portion of that schooling, or a university or community college?
Yeah, cosmetology is a vocational training program. That's how we look at it. That's not academics. You don't need a degree, an academic degree, to be a cosmetologist. You need a vocational certification. Now, here's a caveat to that. You have to take a state test. You have to be licensed through the state of Texas. If you have a felony and some misdemeanors, and the council will work on that early on, because the council already knows anybody looking for a certification, the background check thing is important. Because yes, you've been great the last 2 years, but you want to defer adjudication for a felony. That's going to hinder you. You're not going to be able to take the state license.
But yes, in the example, let's say it's not a state license. Let's say it's not a certification, but so in your example, if they want to be a math teacher and they don't have deficits in reading or math or whatever, they may have other deficits that are an impediment to employment. And so they need to go to the community college or a university. Is there ever any type of help through the VR program for those types of services?
Yes. So if your vocational goal requires a degree, then the council sits down and walks you through what that process looks like. Because there's a percentage that we pay. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but there's a percentage that we pay for people to go to school. There's a whole guideline behind that, but that's something that the council will sit down and talk to you about if your students want to go to college. Sometimes the difference between going to a 4-year institution and a 2-year institution is the fact that classrooms are smaller. So that may be a conversation to be had. Do I need a smaller environment so that I have more one-on-one opportunities with the teacher versus being in a class of 250 people in English class? But yes, we do pay for academic training.
We have another question.
There's criteria to that, because you have to keep a certain GPA. And that's discussed.
while you're in school, is keeping a certain GPA. And for in the essence of time, we do have another question. I'm gonna hit on it because I know this is a question that comes up a lot. And I will say that I'm certified as a National Social Security Advisor, so you can one-off with me and I can go deeper and wider. But also, they have SMRFs, or subject matter experts, with both entities that can talk to you about this. But the question says, my daughter's education is covered by VR because she gets SSI, but I am worried that if she gets a paid internship, which is crucial to end up with a job while in college, she will lose SSI. How do we address this? So one thing I want to say.
You need to talk to your counselor, because what happens, you can let your counselor know that's an issue. And I would call the Social Security office and talk directly to them. And I never want to speak for the horse. I like for the horse, what comes out the horse to be right from the horse. So call your Social Security office, let them pull up your child's information. They will tell you exactly how much money your child can make. It's an internship. It's not a permanent job, whatever it may be. They will give you that. We have SMRFs who can give you guidelines, but they're ultimately going to sit you down with a Social Security person as well. The thing about Social Security is it automatically makes you eligible for our services. If you're on Social Security, you're automatically eligible for VR services.
And again, we are certified in that. And there's a couple of things that I'll just say very quickly. And again, I'll be happy to one off on with you on this. Number one, for 2021, an individual cannot make more than $13.10 per month, or they're no longer considered disabled in the eyes of Social Security. So that's one thing. Number two, if your child is a full-time student, whether they're in high school between the ages of 18 and 22, there is an earned income exclusion for SSI. You have to ask for it through the Social Security office. It has to be approved. But if they're a full-time student and if the child is disabled, full-time is not 12 hours. I believe it's 8 hours for that. But there can be an earned income exclusion where they will not reduce the SSI in exchange for that work. So we have many families that are in VR. Their kids are going to work. They are working. They're not losing their SSI and Medicaid. And it's a very real situation, and we can definitely help you through. The Social Security office can help you through. But there are definite answers to that. So don't stop your VR services or the internship or the paid thing in lieu of thinking that you're going to lose the SSI and Medicaid. There's something called the Social Security Red Book. You can download this, and this is about working while getting benefits and what the rules are. There's a million different programs. Ticket to Work is one of them. So you can read a little bit more about that on the Social Security Red Book, but that's a very good question. Thanks for bringing it up. And
part of they call it a diagnostic interview. Part of the diagnostic interview, after the application process, the counselor is going to ask you those kind of things. They're going to get the financial information from you. And that's when you want to share that my child gets Social Security, and you'll have to show them proof and all that, because with that comes automatic eligibility for our services. So very good point. So remember, I talked about our services not lifetime. So once you've gone through all these services, maybe you need help finding employment, and we can do that. Maybe you need help with interviewing skills because you've been in the training program for 2, 3, 4 years. You need to hone your interview skills up. Maybe you need to work on your resume. Whatever those skill sets are, we help you find a job. We monitor you on that job for 90 days. 90 days. And we call that a successful closure. Hit that next slide for me, Allison. So your counsel will verify your employment, determine if your employment is stable. What does that mean? That means, is the employer happy with you? Are you happy with the employer? That's a win-win. The employer and the counselor and the employee are all happy. Mom and dad don't like the job. Does that factor into a 90-day closure? Okay. So the counselor will verify employment. So people a lot of times don't like that. We don't call on the phone and say, hey, can you tell me this is Workforce Solutions VR Services, is little Johnny still employed? That's not how we do it. We have a very refined way of verifying employment. Some of that will include you turning in your pay stubs to counselors. There's a plethora of ways other than trying to pick up the phone and embarrassing the heck out of you, because that's not what we do. But remember, we're part of Workforce Solutions. So we have access to your work records. Okay, that's the other side of the house. So we verify your employment. We determine if it's stable. So the question that usually comes up here is, what happens if you hit the 90 days and all of a sudden everything goes haywire? Okay. If it goes haywire, then we come back and sit down and say, what went wrong? Did we miss a service that we should have had in place? Let's go back and put that service in place. Okay. So it's not, you hit 90 days and poof, you're gone. If there's issues, no. But if you're stable, that's a win-win, because that's why we're here. We're here to help you get to your employment goal, whatever length of time that takes, based upon the services you need, what the employment goal requires, you finding that job and being on that job successfully for 90 days. Now, there are some other services that come along with this, and I don't want to murk up the waters, but there's something called supported employment. I don't want to confuse you right here, but that's something that you would sit down and talk to the counselor about if your child or the student or the customer requires that. Okay, and then that eventually morphs into natural supports, which are community supports. Okay, next slide. That's our federal funding thing that they make us put that in there, Allison. You can move on past that. Here is one of the ways that you can contact us. So what I want you to see is the VR office locator on there. You can go online and you can pick that up and find an office closest to you. If you look at that 512 number, we call that our rapid engagement team. If you call them tomorrow, they will connect you with an office closest to where you live. What I'm going to send to Allison in the morning is a online referral, and it's called Start My VR. So some of you parents who want to do a little homework tonight, if you go to the Workforce Solutions site and find vocational rehabilitation, you'll be able to find it yourself if you choose to do that search and find. But it's called Start My VR online. It's a form that you can fill out and you can actually do a self-referral. Now, mind you, if you're doing a self-referral on a student, please let the student know you're doing it. Actually, the student should be sitting beside you when you're doing it. And if at all possible, let the student walk through the process with you. Why do I say that? Because this is what happens sometimes. You're putting all this information in, it asks for the customer's cell phone number. You give them your child's cell phone number. Counselor calls student and says, "Hi, this is Marilyn. I'm with Workforce Solutions Vocational Rehabilitation Services. I'm going to do yada, yada, yada. I'm going to send you out yada, yada, yada. And I'm going to set you up for an appointment." And it goes click. The student doesn't know who the heck you are. They don't know nothing about Workforce Solutions, VR services, don't know why you're calling me. So they need to be involved in that. They need to know what that process looks like and what's going to happen on their end. Now, some parents say, "Well, I want to be called first." Okay, that's all well and good, and that's kind of how we can start out, but that's not how we can end. And that's not even how we can walk through the process midway. Again, I want to go back to, you are supervising your child who's not your child now. They're your employee. And every time you have a disagreement with your employee, the employee parent calls you. Is that how you want to rock and roll? No, it is not. So we start teaching that early on. And it starts with the application process. It's fine to be there at the beginning to make sure things are happening and things are in order and all the right information is going along. But when the counselor starts wanting to have direct contact, that direct contact is probably going to be with your student. At 14, 15, and 16, you have to be involved in it, but the contact is with them. The conversation is with them. You have to be there unless you choose not to. When they get to be 17 and 18, that's a little bit different, okay? Because we're getting them ready for independence. We don't want their email address to be mom and dad's email address. Okay.
One thing I always address when we talk, because we always have had families that come up and say, "Well, we tried this before, nobody would call us back. Our counselor closed our file. We couldn't get help. We couldn't do this. We couldn't do that." And those things are all true in the past. And that's why Marilyn is in the role that she is. And she mentioned that there's people in roles like her. So she's the greater Houston area, but Austin and San Antonio, Dallas, all over the big areas across the state, because they recognized the problems that people were having and they aimed, this was their corrective action plan to fix this. And I would say that I've engaged these services for 2 of my kids in the last year, and I've had a really great experience. It hasn't been a bad experience, and it has been very, very helpful. So I wanted to say, Marilyn, you guys have been working hard and working hard to turn things around. And they've had a lot of turnover with COVID. There's been issues. There's issues everywhere with COVID, but they've been working really, really hard to turn this around. So my point is if you've had a bad experience in the past, or if you had a file closed that shouldn't have been closed, get it reopened, reapply,
and that's
come back to the table.
Where we need your tenacity. That's where we need your tenacity. Your tenacity is not so much needed in the VR process, but if your child's not getting the services they need, then you can pick up the phone as a parent. And you can call the counselor, you can call the counselor supervisor, you can call the counselor's manager. Okay, that's where your tenacity really needs to be there, because you're also teaching your child how to be proactive. Don't just say they closed my case and oh well, swell. If it was done incorrectly, then that's where you show, that's where you and your student fight to say, no, this is not fair. To that end, also, that's why I want to make sure that the student knows that they've applied for services. Because let's just be honest, if a counselor has 218 people on their caseload, and they make 2 or 3 calls to somebody who doesn't return their call, they're not going to keep calling. And that's the reality. It's not fair, but it is what it is. So make sure your student understands that. The other thing that I've known to happen too is the student will be referred by the counselor at the school. The student will come the first 2 times, but the student won't come after that. And they don't want to come because somebody sees me go in that office. That if you know that's happening, you need to have a conversation with the counselor that my child feels uncomfortable, because then it can be changed. Your child can meet the counselor at the office. Okay, so there's some workarounds with that too. But the biggest thing is to make sure that the student buys into, here's a group of people that can sit around the table and ensure that I'm successful after high school. So, do we have bad counselors? Absolutely. My apologies for that. There are bad people everywhere. We got some in our family, but we do our due diligence to push through and make sure we're asking the right questions and we're getting the services that we need. 14, no limit. If you're 80 years old and want to engage in employment and you have a vocational goal, there you go.
So that was the question. So so for VR services, is it true that it's only from 14 to 22? Transition
services, yes.
Transition, but there is vocational rehab services. There is vocational rehab right on up if you have a disability and impediments, all the things you talked about.
What even people older than 22. Transition services. There is an adult program as well.
Got it. Okay, so there is help for that. So right here, what I've done is I've put Marilyn Gilbreath's contact information on here. So Marilyn wouldn't be your counselor. She's like the community liaison, but what she'll do is she can set up a time, chat with you a little bit further, and she gets you connected to the counselor in your area, your office. Fort Bend, there's a Rosenberg office, there's offices in Houston. So whether you're in Harris County, Fort Bend County, we may have people from all over the state on here tonight. I don't know where everybody is from. But on this back slide previously, so if you're not in Harris County, if I can get it to go back, I don't even know if I can. But that locator, and we're gonna have this. We're gonna send a copy of the slides in the email. We're gonna send that link that Marilyn talked about, and we're gonna send this recording. But that locator will help you locate your local office. But even Marilyn's email on here, if you would like to know who the community outreach awareness specialist is in your area, you can go ahead and fire an email off to Marilyn on that, and she will let you know who your person is in your area.
Absolutely.
Marilyn, you were super fabulous tonight. Again, I've got 7:30, so we're going to wrap up for tonight. Again, if it was your first time, I know it does go by quick. If it was your first time being here with us tonight on the ADDA support group, we're glad you're here. We meet the last Tuesday, typically the last Tuesday of every month. We meet by Zoom. It's from 6:30 to 7:30. And we do have a different speaker every time we meet on matters relative to parenting kids, even, the teenagers, whatever they are, with ADD, ADHD. So I hope you'll join us again. We'll get that email out to you in the next day or so with these things. And thanks for spending your time with us. Thanks for volunteering to speak with us tonight, Marilyn. It's always great to have you back.
Thank you guys for having me. It's always a pleasure. Love the questions.
Absolutely. Take care. Good luck, everybody. Call VR if you're going to be happy you did. Bye now.